Hey, welcome everybody. Thank you for giving up your lunchtime. Talk, it's well worth it. This is Keith Noble, Abi White, from Forepoint in Preston. Very successful design studio. Today we're going to talk about fear. Why we have it. Everybody gets it. How to handle it. And what we can do with it, yes? Is that about right?
Yeah. Basically, yeah, we're done.
Okay, I'm not going to witter on because you hear me enough. I'm going to hand it over to Abi and Keith. So please, quick round of applause.
Thank you, Billy. So, as Billy said, my name is Abi. I'm a senior designer. I did my degree at Blackpool. Don't think less of me, it was a very good course at the time. During my third year I did 2 placements. I did a placement at the Chase and I did a placement at a company called Forepoint in Preston. So when I graduated, I worked at the Chase for about 5 years and then I had a baby. And back then there was no such thing as hybrid working. You couldn't work from home, there was no flexible working. I was told under no uncertain terms I still needed to be at my desk for 9 and I wasn't going to leave till 6. If you have any children, you'll recognise there's no childcare that fits around those hours. So I decided to make a career choice to go in-house and ended up working for one of the Chase's clients. I worked there to establish their internal design team. And at the same time, I was also lecturing back at Blackpool on their degree course, so talking to students like you, helping out on the 3rd year of their degree. And I actually took some students to go and meet my old friends at Forepoint, to go and have portfolio reviews and pizza, coincidentally. And somehow I ended up walking away with a job myself. So that was about 6.5 years ago. So I've been back at Forepoint, so that was a great move. So I was in an agency and then I went in-house and then I went back into an agency. Yeah.
I'm Keith, I'm a director and creative partner at Forepoint, so my path's not dissimilar really. I'm from the North East originally and I did a foundation course over there, and then somebody told me to come to Preston to the degree course. They didn't know where Preston was, clearly found out where it was. Did the degree course there, and probably not dissimilar, the lecturer at the time, I suppose equivalent to Billy, was a guy called Simon Bailey, and he taught me while I was there for 4 years, and then he got me my first job at the Chase as well, and then Simon went on to set up the company, which is essentially Forepoint, and employed me 5 years later. So I had a couple of years working at the Chase. I worked at another agency in Manchester called Horseman Cook, and then got a phone call 5 years after graduating from Simon saying, "Do you want to come and work in Preston?" And the rest, as they say, is kind of history, and that was quite a while ago. You'll probably get an idea of the numbers, hopefully that later, but that's why I ended up where I am.
So, our talk today is on this subject, so it's triskaidekaphobia. Does anybody know what that word means? No? So originally,
sure that you didn't know what it meant.
Definitely don't know what that word means.
Say that again, I'll go on.
I can say all the words, triskaidekaphobia, I bet you can't say it though.
No, I can't.
So we originally wrote this talk for a conference week which was at Preston, and they have a theme every year, and the theme at the time was 13. So we were thinking around what could we do the talk around, and we found this word which was triskaidekaphobia. So don't worry, it's not a medical seminar, we are Forepoint, and it's definitely about design.
Definitely.
So would you take a flight on Friday the 13th?
I would, and I did. I wish I hadn't, but I did. It was March the 13th, Friday the 13th, 2020, which was about a week before lockdown. And I look back at it now and think, oh, really I shouldn't have been there in the first place. And we were in Austria, got on the flight to leave Austria, and we left Innsbruck, and they literally switched off the lights and shut the shutters at the airport. I got to Frankfurt, and it was literally like that on Friday the 13th, and it was only retrospectively doing this when you asked that question, maybe it's not a good idea.
No. Would you live in house number 13? Would that bother you? Wouldn't bother me. I live in 130, it's got 13 in there, doesn't scare me. But there are some things about 13 that can be quite superstitious, and that fear is triskaidekaphobia, the fear of the number 13. 13 is associated with bad luck or danger due to superstition. Did you know that some airlines don't have a row 13 because they can't sell seats on the flight because people are so superstitious they don't want to sit on row 13? Some skyscrapers don't have a button for the floor 13, they just go from 12 to 14. Apparently some of the biggest elevator makers in the world actually offer that. You can actually omit the button 13 if you wish. And then there's some other random fears. So there's loads of really weird fears with really weird names. So this is choleraphobia. This is a fear of clowns. Apologies to anyone in here that's petrified by that image.
We've got a colleague of ours, Jade, and we did a little bit of this at work. We did a presentation. She absolutely, I can't say what she did, but she was terrified. Literally just the look of it and the thought of it absolutely fills her with dread. It's a weird one, isn't it?
Petrified. This one, a weird one. This is trypophobia. So this is the fear of small clusters of holes. Anyone have that fear in here?
Yeah. Sorry,
really? Oh,
I can tell you my story about this. This is not a good idea.
No, everyone's going to bed left before we've even got started. We actually work with a guy called Dave, an illustrator, who has this fear, petrified of sponges and things like that.
I'm just going to judge this next one. I can see a gentleman at the back there, so... Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Fear of beards.
Hognophobia. This is the fear of beards. This is a real fear. So, you know, you might just be walking around with your lovely, voluptuous beard and someone might walk past you and be actually petrified, and that's a real fear. That's hognophobia.
Right, let me do this one. Let me try this. This is hypopotomostronsiquipedaliophobia.
Yeah, any guesses what that might be? That's the fear of long words, which is pretty ironic.
It's true, we haven't made that, that's actual fact.
Yeah, so you're probably thinking, what the hell are these guys talking about? So if you just watch this video, hopefully it will all make sense.
I'm going to put things down.
That was even worse! That was turned up so loud! Jesus Christ. Okay, so hopefully you've all woken up now. Hopefully nobody's spilled anything on the floor there, like popcorn. But yes, fear, we're going to be talking about fear, specifically about fear within the creative industry, and most importantly, why you shouldn't be afraid. Also, special thanks to Keith for insisting that I use all the official words for these fears. So I've got a ton of really difficult words to pronounce today.
I did the most difficult one, so you can get on with the rest.
Okay. So, glossophobia. Does anyone have a clue what this might be? It is not the fear of shiny things. No? Okay, so glossophobia is a fear of public speaking. So, firstly, we're pretty nervous to be here today. We walked in and saw this lecture theatre and all these seats and thought, oh my God, what on earth have we signed up for? But study after study confirms that public speaking remains our single greatest fear, even higher on the list than death. So this is a real thing, it's really serious, everybody has it. And the main reason for that fear of public speaking is because we feel judged, we feel exposed, we're afraid of being humiliated and of making a fool out of ourselves. So hands up if you've got a fear of public speaking. Yeah, pretty much the lot of you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure anyone enjoys public speaking. I mean, look at Keith's face when I told him what I'd signed us up for again. I keep doing this and he keeps coming with me.
And I'll keep going back on it.
So if you suffer from glossophobia, rest assured that it's super normal. You just saw a show of hands then where the majority of people in the room have a fear of public speaking, myself included, who is stood here publicly speaking to you guys. That fear can take many forms, ranging from slight nervousness through to paralysing fear and panic. Throw in the middle a nervous poo or a tactical vomit, and that pretty much covers the whole spectrum of glossophobia. But with preparation and persistence, you can overcome it. So, in our industry, the creative industry, is it a worry? When might you need to speak to people? Unfortunately, all the time, because you're going to want to be able to have the ability to share ideas with your team, you're going to want to be able to present to clients, pitching for work, talking through your portfolio in an interview, or maybe one day you might get roped in to stand on a stage and talk to a group of students. So, some tips to overcome the fear of glossophobia. So, know your subject. So, you will speak with passion if you know what you're talking about. If you're presenting your work, your portfolio, ideas, talk about the things that you're excited about. When we brief student projects, we always emphasise that we want you to have a project at the end of this that you can talk confidently about. Don't put work in your portfolio that you're not proud of, because that will come through in an interview. Only put in the stuff that you're really proud of, and you should be really striving whilst you're at university to produce work that you're proud of, so that when you go into an interview, it's easy to talk about because you're passionate about it, and that will come across. So the more you care about a topic, the less likely you are to go off track. And if you do get a little bit lost, you can recover quickly. And people do see through nonsense, they can tell if you're lying. So, you know, just do the things that you care about, speak with passion, and that will be a first step towards overcoming that fear. So I recently participated, I say recently, it was about 2 years ago, feels like yesterday, in a creative programme called School of Thought. If you've not heard of it, look it up. I am sort of 20 years into my career and it was still beneficial to me. It's a 12-week programme where you get a brief from a different agency every single week, and you get a brief on a Monday, and by the Thursday you have to have come up with a creative solution that you go to the agency and pitch your concept to them. It's a brilliant way to get in a foot of 12 different doors, a great way to practice public speaking, a great way to speed up your ideas development. I personally did it because I'd had a bit of a wobble after I'd had a maternity leave, and I was really struggling, and I did it as a kick up the bum to myself, basically. But I knew that my most nervous pitch was going to be for a guy called James Cross. He owns an agency called Meanwhile. He's ex-BBC. If you don't follow them. They do some incredible work. But I knew my most nervous pitch was going to be in front of this guy. One, because he's super handsome, and secondly, because he's got a really successful agency. So I thought, right, when I go to that pitch, I'm going to go with no notes, I'm going to go with no props, nothing. I'm going to stand up and deliver my concept with nothing visual. It's going to be solely reliant on me. Now, that could have backfired. I could have got in front of him and thought, oh, I can't speak, my brain's gone blank. But I was so confident in my idea that I knew that I could do it, and it was a perfectly safe place to practice that ability, to talk without prompts, to explain an idea without visuals. And he actually said it was the best pitch that he'd ever seen. So that was lovely, and that was really, really good for my confidence, because like I said, I was sort of struggling at the time. So my point is, if you know your subject, you can speak with passion, and that will come through. So, the 3 Ps.
I know the answer. I know the answer to this.
I know what you're going to say.
This is P, puke and pass out.
That is
They're the
not
3
the
things
answer.
to do with public speaking.
That is not the answer.
It is.
That is not the answer. This is some good advice from our other director, Steve, and it's not P, puke and pass out, although that may be part of the process, but you just keep that to yourself. The actual 3 Ps are plan, prep and practice. So plan the structure. If you are public speaking, then plan what you want to say. So plan the key points, plan the takeaways. No, that's not cheesy chips, that's the things that you want people to take away. We're going to be talking to you for nearly an hour. You're not going to remember everything we've said, but there'll be certain things in there that we will reiterate and we will want you to remember. Pizza's here. Pizza's here. So, yes, plan. So plan the structure, plan what you want people to remember, and reiterate that throughout. Preparation, so give yourself time to create or write a presentation that you're proud of. This presentation took me weeks to write because I wanted to do something that I could speak with passionate about and something that I was proud of. Don't rush it, otherwise you're not going to feel confident when you're talking. And practice. So I don't know about you guys, I always talk to myself in the car. I talk if I'm working from home and I'm at my desk on my own, I talk to myself. I practice the conversations that I might have with people. I practice the questions that they may or may not ask me. I practice what my response would be to the question that may never get asked. But it's a really good way of sort of practicing your public speaking. If you are doing a talk, practice speaking out loud. Don't just write something or a presentation. Don't just write it down and read it in your head. Write it down and read it out, because you might have written words that aren't actually how you speak. So that's another thing, like make sure you write a speech or a presentation in your own voice rather than an assumption of how people expect you to speak. See each presentation as a practice. Everybody is human, everyone makes mistakes, everyone will understand if I fluff a few lines today. pretty confident that you're not going to judge me because you're looking at me thinking, oh, she's doing a good thing, she's trying. Or there's a high risk strategy, which is to wait until the last minute, throw it all together, wing it. Some people absolutely buzz off this, but if you are feeling nervous, even a little bit, the 3 Ps, the plan, prep and practice, not PP, you can pass out, that is your friend, and that will help you have a really nice structure and give you a little bit of confidence when you're going to be delivering whatever public speaking you're doing. Keith, you had a good story here.
Just off the back of that, there's a good friend of mine. He works in retail, and he's got a great job. He goes around the world now, different retail shops, different kind of brands, and sort of looks at how the high street is working and what shops are doing, the innovations they're bringing, stuff like that. It's a really clever blog. And he got asked to do a TED Talk, which is like, it's up there, everybody's watched the TED Talk. And he got asked to do a TED Talk because he's really good in his field. And I remember he messaged me saying, I've got a TED Talk, I've got 3 months to create a TED Talk. I said, it's fine, it's a 15-minute thing. And he said, right, I'm going to go in and do this. And he scripted out this presentation. He worked it all out, and he wanted to do it off the cuff. So he didn't want to have any props, he didn't want to have any, he had slides, didn't want any notes. And he practiced, and he practiced, and he's practiced, and he just got married recently. And he literally just, his wife was just kind of fed up with hearing the same thing week in, week out. And he got it to the perfect kind of, literally, it was so natural. And it came the day of his presentation, and he got up on stage, and he went completely blank. And he was in front of, I don't know, several hundred people. And he was just stood on the stage, he just said, my mind went, I had no clue what I'm doing. He said, but then the audience started to clap. And everybody just started to cheer him. And then he had somebody on the sidelines that brought his laptop on, with all his notes on, and he just did his presentation from his notes. And he said it was just one of those moments that he couldn't plan for that, because he tried to plan for it, but he had a backup. And that's always important, and there's another example of that. I think backups, plan A and plan B, often plan C are really good too. Because I remember doing a presentation, we had to go to do a presentation, it was down in London Way, to a CEO of a big, sort of, it was Hewlett Packard, and the sort of business side of that was in the kind of defence industry. So we were doing a big presentation for a campaign, some brand work. So I took my laptop, I had it all prepared. I had it on a USB, just in case the laptop didn't work. And I thought, while I was sat on the train, I thought, well, I'll do some printouts of things, so I'll go old school. So I can sit and read them on the train, I thought, that's fine, just as a little bit of that's for my benefit. Got to the presentation, we had like, sort of, I think it was about 10 people, CEO, big dour Scottish bloke. He never said anything, he looked like he was just about to kill you most of the time. And so I got there, and a bit like Abby, just got plumbing stuff in, IT didn't work. Trying all these different things, IT didn't work. USB stick, stick the USB stick. No, you can't do that. Security risk, can't do that. So I ended up getting the printed sheets out, and I was literally on the floor like this with A3 sheets of paper, presenting to a bunch of blokes that were behind me, going through slide by slide, essentially page by page by page. And I remember being the end of this presentation, just kind of relieved, just looking down, and I just looked up. This CEO guy was just stood there staring at me. And he just looked at me. I thought I'm going to die. He thinks this is terrible, and he just went, I like it. And that was it. That was all it was. And I found myself just praying towards him and said, thank you very much. But all I say is, it's a backup of the backup of the backup. And even today, if things have gone wrong here, we have to have backup. So it's just one bit of advice that I've experienced, and I would say that's one thing you should do. Always have a plan B, maybe a plan C.
So this is Keith's idol.
Yes, just take a few minutes to appreciate my man crush, Mr. Grohl. I know he's had a bit of bad press lately. I don't know whether you know, he's had a
Keith
baby
is
outside
actually the mother of his love child.
I'm actually the mother.
I've just had to leak that now.
I am.
Yeah.
But the point is, apart from him being amazing, it's like we talk about presenting stuff, we talk about public speaking. You wouldn't just rock up and have a go at it, would you? If you were a musician, or if you were, a kind of a sportsman, you practice, and you practice, and you practice. And the more you practice, the better you get. You don't get perfect, but you make progress, and it's a bit like that. So clearly, Mr. Grohl is quite good, but he's had a lot of practice, and he does it daily. And like anything else, the more you practice, the better you get, and public speaking is just like that.
Yeah, similarly, if you're doing a sport, if you're training to be excellent in a sport, gymnastics, athletics, football, you don't just turn up on a pitch or a competition, you train some more. which is the story of my life, because my middle daughter is a competitive gymnast. She's 12 years old. She's doing between 17 and 20 hours a week of training at 12 years old. That's an evidence of a commitment, but also that the amount of work that goes into be able to be good at something. And then she goes to competitions, she makes mistakes, she learns and she tries again. Creating ideas and presenting and public speaking is a very similar kind of performance, because practice makes progress. Progress being the key word here, because nobody is perfect. Different people find different ways to deal with the fear of public speaking, but everyone has to start at the same point, and that point is facing your fear as opposed to avoiding it. Remember, the more that you do something that you're scared of, the easier it is going to be. If you constantly avoid it, you are never ever going to get any better at it. One thing that helps me in my portfolio, and I still do this now, if I am going to an interview or I want to talk through work with a client, I'll always have in the corner, away from the design, a couple of bullet points, a couple of notes, so that if my mind goes blank, which it frequently does, there's something that I can just quickly look at and reference, just to give me just a little bit of a reminder. And when you guys are going out to interview, I would recommend that you just have in the corner the key takeaways that you wanted the person that's interviewing you to get from that piece of work that you're looking at. So like this presentation, it's literally full of notes. You will notice that I have not left this podium because I cannot possibly remember all of this information. You know, it's full of notes. Next bit of advice is to breathe. So you won't get very far if you pass out because you forget to breathe. It sounds really silly, but it's super simple. And if you're not breathing as you're speaking, if you're not breathing when you start in an interview because you're absolutely petrified, you're going to make yourself ill, and then that's going to throw you off course even more. Take your time. It's not a race. Whoever is listening to you is listening to you for the first time. So give them time to listen. Give them time to digest what you're saying. Ensure that you speak loudly enough. So I'm having to, I have a mic on, I'm having to raise my voice still to speak to you to make sure that you can hear me. If I'm talking to a client face to face or on the phone, I'm still having to use a slightly different tone. If I'm talking to a colleague and I want my opinion to be heard, you have to change the tone in your voice, and that's just something that you need to get comfortable in doing. University is a great place to practice that. Be honest, tell people if you're feeling nervous, because what you're actually doing there is putting them on your side, being authentic, and actually by admitting that you feel nervous, you actually, ironically, feel less nervous. So that's really good. Even if you go to an interview and you say, I feel really nervous about this, they will do everything they can to put you at ease because they want to get the best out of you. So don't be embarrassed to admit that you're nervous. Like I said before, keep your language simple. Don't try and talk in whatever you assume to be like a business speak. That is not how you speak. I once had a student not that long ago email me to see if there was any work placements, and I am not joking. This email said something about my esteemed establishment and respectful organisation and how you would really treasure the opportunity to work with such wonderful colleagues. Well, I'm sorry, but unless this guy is going to turn up in a smoking jacket and start talking to me in that tone, it completely disengaged me. And it actually turned out what he'd done was use AI to write the email, which was evident really, because I don't think anybody really speaks like Shakespeare anymore.
We have that. We have the same issue with clients as well. Just to build on that point, so it's not only what you guys might do, but we have clients that think they have to speak. We call it corporate branding. It's speaking, that corporate speak that everybody has, the language and the words that they use. And there seems to be this thing that you have to use that language. That's the expectation. And I think one of the biggest problems is they forget in the corporate world, in the business world, that just like you and I, we're all human beings, and nobody goes home and talks like that. So it's really important that, like I say, the integrity of how you are, you've just got to be able to communicate properly. So as long as you can get your point across, you don't have to try and be something else.
Yeah.
So it happens in the corporate world, in the business world, with our clients as well as individuals with their interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, don't fear silence. Silent pauses will help you when you're talking because it helps you to reset. And it also gives the audience a chance to actually reflect on what you've said. So instead of filling a pause with a sort of mumble or a nervous noise, just be silent, because what you're doing there is resetting your own sort of pitch and allowing people to take in what you've said. So what do these two have in common? Any ideas?
Future husbands.
Ex-husbands, so close, so close.
All right, okay.
They both suffer from glossophobia. So Arnold Schwarzenegger, so when he first went to the US, he could barely speak a word of English. He certainly wasn't a charismatic presenter. He knew very few phrases. He was a complete unknown outside the world of bodybuilding, but instead of shying away from public speaking, he actually sought out opportunities. He looked for places that he could speak. He wanted to make gradual improvements. He didn't want to go in and be the best. He knew that he couldn't do it, so he went in and he did a little bit, and he made a gradual improvement each time, and step by step, little by little, he transformed himself from a one-dimensional Terminator into a charismatic governor of one of the wealthiest states in the US. And then my second husband, Mark Zuckerberg, so he's super, super smart. He's the founder of one of the most valuable companies in the history of the world. He pretty much single-handedly populated the world of social media. You would assume that Mark Zuckerberg was one of the most confident speakers out there, but you would be wrong. Apparently, in a recent conference where he was on stage being peppered with questions about a privacy policy, he was described as literally dissolving in a puddle of his own sweat. So you are not alone. Our second fear, atychiphobia.
I know what this is. The fear of small things. No, it's not.
Have you noticed Keith's like the
I'm really contributing on that.
The
Really
giddy one out
contributing
of the two, which is unusual because it's usually me. But no, atychiphobia is the fear of failure, so the fear of things going wrong, the belief that you are not going to be good enough, that you are going to disappoint yourself or other people in your life or in your workplace, your parents, your employer, your partner. It's the constant overwhelming feeling of dread that accompanies the undertaking of projects, whether that's a personal project or in pursuit of life goals or something career-wise. But it's super, super common in our industry because we're bombarded with people's opinions on our work. You can't avoid that, but the biggest lesson here is that not everyone is going to like everything that you've done, and that is okay. Graphic design, creativity, illustration, photography, it's not a science, it's an art, and that is open to everybody's interpretation. So what I think is absolutely beautiful and fantastic, Keith might think is a load of crap, you might like it, and that's the beauty of working in the creative industry because it is based on opinion. So hands up, who is afraid of failure? Exactly, quite a lot of you.
I like the honesty.
Yeah. So what can we do to decrease our fear of failure? So there's something called a growth mindset. A growth mindset is a key to combating fear of failure because it's about accepting that failure is part of the journey. Failure is not something to be avoided. Failure is something that you embrace and you go into openly knowing that you might fail because you know that however it works out, if it's good or it's bad, you're still going to learn from it. And it's about developing skills and about practice. And practice does involve failure. Everybody fails and you don't improve unless you've failed. So you need to learn to welcome failure because that is part of growing and part of learning. It's really, really important to try and recategorise what failure means. So when you redefine what failure is, it's about actually failure is not a negative thing. Failure is about developing this new perspective, about seeing failure as this positive thing rather than a life-destroying disaster. You need to learn to develop a new relationship with failure. Don't think about it negatively, think about it as part of the process. Shift your thinking so that you see it as a chance to learn and a chance to grow. Part of that involves giving yourself permission to fail, which is really difficult because to give yourself permission to fail is to be exposed and to be vulnerable and maybe put you in a situation that might feel a little bit uncomfortable. But when you give yourself permission to fail, whilst it can be terrifying, it can also be quite liberating because you start to care less about what might go wrong and actually what might go right and what might you learn from this. So ask yourself, what is the worst possible thing that could happen? What's the worst thing that could have happened today? Tech wouldn't work, I forget what I'm saying. Are you guys going to think any less of me? No, because we find an alternate. We'd sit and we'd have a chat with you, just an open chat. There's always something that you can do. So you'll likely discover that it is not going to be a life-changing disaster, whatever you're afraid of. The worst case scenario, you can still move forward, you can still go forward with more knowledge than had you not tried, had you not taken the risk. You obviously need to try and avoid not making the same mistakes over and over and over again, because the idea is that you learn and improve, but you can and you will make multiple mistakes over multiple times in your career, and that's okay, because that's where your improvements come from, and that's the kind of things that you can pass on to other people as well.
We were talking before about failure and about what perceptions are, and I think we talked about certainly about social media, weren't we?
Yeah.
That you probably look at most things, whatever platform you're on, you always read about people's successes. Everybody's amazing, everybody's got a great life, they're all having great holidays, doing great things, got great careers, you know, achieving amazing things. And it's a strange little bubble that you end up living in, that you believe that that's what the world is like and what everybody's world's like. And it's not like that, it's just the side that they portray. And you find that in agency world, you find that in you know, people that have maybe great egos, they put across that everything is fantastic, and you can believe them. And agencies do. We've seen agencies that have amazing kind of front to their business, but you go behind the scenes and there's nothing there because it's all fun. And they don't accept, and I think failure is a really interesting word because it's not. And I think we were discussing in the car, I can't think of examples, but a lot of things happen because things have failed. So because something failed, it led to something else. And in our world, it's about innovation and about ideas and about progression. So in order to progress, you sometimes have to fail quite a lot, and you get better outcomes. And it's really hard to kind of accept that, but it's a really, really important. You learn so much more from failure, which is not a great word, than you do from success.
Yeah, definitely. And also, people publicise their wins. No one's publicising all the times it didn't go right. And the media love to kick people when they're down. The industry loves to have an opinion. Everybody loves to go on brand new and slag off a new brand, but actually you're slagging off something that you don't understand. You don't know what that client's expectation was, you don't know what restrictions they had, you don't know what the budget was, you don't know anything about it. So let's all agree today to not do that. Let's not embrace that culture of negativity and seeing failure as a bad thing. Let's not all jump to conclusions with other people's work, because you don't know what restrictions were in place when that piece of work was done, and hopefully the industry as a whole would become a little bit more welcoming and a little bit less judging. So, Michael Jordan once said, "I can accept failure, everyone fails in something, but I cannot accept not trying." This is something you had some insights around.
No, yeah, I think it's a really interesting point, and I think it's a kind of human nature, but I think us creative folks are particularly susceptible to that angst, to that fear of failure. And it's a strange thing, because I think that you know, we're thinking about ideas, we're thinking about performance in a way to do your next thing, to come up with your next idea. And I think that there's something that drives us to be better, because we're slightly scared about not being able to do it, or you're only ever as good as your last job. You hear that a lot of times. The last piece of work you did was, you've got to be better than that next time. So there's a little bit in our psyche, in our makeup as creative people, that say, I've got to push myself, I've got to do better than last time. And I think, in a way, that bit of fear is really good, because it's healthy, because you're not just being complacent, you're not just sitting on your laurels thinking, yeah, I've got this nailed. So there's that little bit of fear that drives you forward and make that better, to improve what you do. And I think the flip side of that is you probably had this feeling as well, that when you get it right, and you come up with that idea, and everything kind of connects together, or you do a presentation and you get amazing kind of feedback on it. It's like a drug, it's like a high that you get. I'm sure it's probably a dopamine thing that you get, and it makes those kind of fears totally worthwhile. And I think in our world, it's in some ways you think, well, wouldn't it be nice just to be a nice, even, straight line? But actually it's dull as hell. So the fear part makes the highs really good and really interesting, and I think you just have to learn to cope. And the key thing with fear is not to let it overwhelm you.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like having nerves. You know, you talk about, there's lots of performers that have stage fright, and you go, how can you possibly have stage fright? And you get like Dave Grohl, don't think he has stage fright, but they get up and they do amazing things on stage, and you think, how can you do that? So it's a hard thing to balance, but we need that little bit of fear to help us perform. It's just how you control it to make sure that it doesn't overwhelm you and stop you from doing things.
Yeah, which leads us nicely on to our next fear, So this is creatiphobia.
You made that up, haven't you?
Yes, I did make this one up because I couldn't find a word for it, and I thought, actually, I'm going to have that introduced into the English dictionary, so you can thank me for that one. But this is the fear of running out of ideas. This is a real thing. Like I earn money, pay my mortgage on my ability to have ideas. So the fear that the way that I earn my income might depend on something that I might run out of is petrifying. What happens if I don't have another good idea? What happens if that was it? What happens if I've peaked? It's a very, very common fear in the industry, and creativity is this weird, ethereal thing. It seems out of control. It's not a science, like we said before. It's not maths. There's no set answer to come to the solution. There's loads of different ways that you can get to a solution. Your parents have probably all said to you, oh, I don't know where your ideas come from. Neither do I. Absolutely no idea. Don't even ask me. You know, we don't seem to have a say in the matter. It just seems to sort of come to us, and that's the beauty of being creative, is that your ability to sort of think beyond the realms of normal is what you can actually derive a career from. But what if that stops, and what if you run out of ideas? So hands up who worries that they might run out of ideas, or they might not be able to build a career on being creative. So that's quite a lot of you still, probably 60% of you. But creativity is a gift. Creativity is something that you were born with. If you were born with something, it is not going to go away. We don't need to worry about how deep that creative well is and how soon it's going to run dry, because I have never actually heard of anybody in the industry that actually did run out of ideas. Sometimes problems are just harder to solve. Sometimes they need tackling from a different angle, but if you are a creative person, that is a gift and something that you should embrace. The brain is like a muscle, so the more you use it, the stronger it gets. The fear that you've stumbled upon the last great idea can be eased if you just look around and look back on all the great work that you've generated already. I gave a lecture on Tuesday to another university. I didn't have a great talk like this, so I just did a talk about my career and the work that I'd done from being at university through to now. And it was really refreshing, and it was a real confidence boost for me, because I realised there's loads of work that I'd forgotten about. There's stuff there, and it was great to sort of remind myself of the good stuff that I'd done, and also to show people that, you know, a little idea that you might do when you were a junior, 20 years on, is still a great idea. So it's recognising and improving along the way. Also, I think it's important to say that no idea is truly a bad idea. It might just be that you didn't have the skill to implement it. Maybe you didn't have the resource all the time, or maybe it's just the wrong client, or maybe it's just wrong for that brief. It doesn't mean it's useless. What you want to do there is sort of keep it in the bank so that you can revisit it. We always have, when we do concept work for clients, we'll have ideas and we'll only present them, say, 3, but we might have had 12. They weren't a load of other bad ideas, they just weren't appropriate for that client. So there might be something that a few years down the line, you might think, actually, I feel like I've been in this territory before, and what did I do then? And you can always use a good idea, it just might not be the right time.
I think the important point of that is to get the ideas out. I think you probably sat and stared at a blank screen or a blank bit of paper thinking, I've got no ideas. You have, you're just waiting for the perfect one.
Yeah,
you're waiting for it to come out in like a beautifully born baby that's all kind of formed in the right way it should be. And, you know, no offence to everybody's got babies, sometimes your babies can be a bit ugly, and you've got to accept that there are some ugly babies. My niece was really ugly. She's lovely now, but I'll tell her. But, you know, that is an important thing, because, again, part of this evolution is just getting something out, get it down on paper, or however you do it, and then work on it. Sometimes you do have to go cut your losses, but get them out and get them down. And they're not bad, they just might not be right for that purpose, like Abi was saying.
Yeah, exactly. So a good way to keep those creative vibes flowing is to expose yourself. No, I don't mean stripping off.
That was just a misunderstanding.
I don't mean stripping off. I mean expose yourself to as much creativity as possible, as much inspiration as possible. It doesn't always come from where you think it might come from. Yes, there are art galleries, yes, there are D&AD annuals, but it is also in the world around you. And then there's the obvious places to go for on the internet, but there's books. Books are fantastic. Books are produced for a reason, and books curate the best work of the time. So go to a library, look at books, buy books, you know, immerse yourself, don't just look at something on a screen.
I think I was just adding to that, I think we've been doing a bit of work ourselves with that values and behaviour stuff, And we formed one of ours, which is just act like a sponge. And it, you know, and honestly, it's the only way you can describe how you fill your heads with stuff that can turn into ideas.
Yeah.
And you don't know what it is. It could be watching a TV program, it could be listening to a podcast, it could be being in here having a chat with somebody. And all of these things add up to stuff that gets into your head. And you never know when you need those bits of information. But if you don't do that stuff, you're not going to fill your head with interesting things, random things, things you never even think might be of value, but inevitably one day they will be.
Yeah, absolutely. So also, listen. So designers do a lot of talking, but they also should do a lot of listening. So listen more than you talk. Watch, observe, absorb. Always try to over-deliver. Don't be afraid of asking stupid questions. This is really, really important. We rephrase this at Forepoint as intelligent naivety. And it's about asking stupid questions, or about the questions that you fear may make you look stupid. But actually, those are the type of questions that are generally the most important questions. Stupid questions avoid mistakes, miscommunication, they stop you going off on a tangent that's completely the wrong direction. There's a power and a confidence in being able to ask those questions to a client, to a tutor, to a friend. There's a power in that, and that is something that you should learn and practice doing. And don't feel embarrassed about asking that question, because in reality, the only stupid question there is the question that is asked after a cock-up has been made. We work in some really complex industries. So we work in the nuclear industry, the tech industry, we work in defence, we work for the government. All of those guys have their own language. They speak in the most complicated set of acronyms. We go into meetings and we don't know what they're talking about. They're so immersed in their client world that they come to us with a problem because they can't communicate something. They can't communicate it because they're talking in their local language, essentially. So we act as a filter. So a design consultancy or an advertising agency will act as a filter, so that you can take that complex client world and you can be the filter to understand it. And the only way you can understand it is by asking those awkward, silly questions, maybe 2-3 times. Ask the questions so that when you come out with your solutions at the end, the layman can understand it.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think, just to build on that, there's been times where I've been in meetings at those kinds of industries, whether it's the defence industry or nuclear industry, and you're chatting about a project and you listen to somebody telling you what it is, the product or the service or the situation. And they kid you not, there's whole sentences in acronyms. And I just go, look, right, can you just explain what EDP means? And they'll explain what EDP means. And they'll say, what does that mean? And you get them to explain. One, to make sure that they know what they're talking about for a start, because sometimes that helps. And I remember coming out of a meeting once, and one of the clients said to me, he said, really glad you asked that, because I didn't know what they meant. And I just thought, well, how often does that happen? Where you're in a room and people are just frightened to ask what they think is a stupid question. It's only stupid if you keep asking the same thing over and over and over again. But more often than that, so 95% of the time, you're asking the thing that everybody else in the room is wishing they could ask, didn't have the confidence to, or didn't feel, they felt it was a stupid question.
The answer to that question is going to help everybody.
Yeah. And that's another one of our behavioural things, as well as a sponge, ask stupid questions is one of ours.
So the next one, you're probably all familiar with this one, no silly words, just imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is that uncomfortable feeling where you feel like you're underqualified, you're incompetent. You might look around and assume that everyone knows what they're doing except you. You might look at me and Keith and think, we know what we're doing. We don't.
Winging it. Somebody said before,
yeah.
Winging it. We've just been winging it.
You might do something really fantastic and you won't allow yourself to accept that as fantastic. You will actually chalk your accomplishment up to good luck or fate. It's about feeling like a fraud. It's about feeling like you don't belong when you're going to get exposed and people are going to find out you don't know what you're doing, what you're talking about. So hands up if you've ever experienced imposter syndrome. Yeah, so that's a lot of you again. So hopefully what you're getting from this is all of these fears. There's a mixture of ages in here. I'm obviously very young, Keith is very old. And we both have those fears. Everyone has those fears. They don't go away through your career, you just sort of learn to do something with them.
I've had 34 years of good luck. So this is all good fortune. This is not about fate. This is me winging it for 34 years. So that's just put it in context for how I feel about it.
So apparently, which the numbers probably stacked up in the room today, 70 to 80% of people are thought to suffer from imposter syndrome, and actually the other 20 to 30% are probably lying and they don't want to admit it to themselves. So how can you be afraid and do it anyway? Does fake it till you make it really work? So what you need to do is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like we said before, you don't improve unless you go through failures and difficult times. You have to learn to push yourself, because this is how we grow and this is how we learn. So what works with faking it till you make it in particular is you sort of develop a confidence in pretending you have a skill, because what you're actually doing is practicing that skill whilst you stretch into that uncharted territory. Obviously don't proclaim that you can do really far away from where you are now, but sort of pushing yourself and actually challenging yourself and pretending you can do that role. You might actually find you can do it, and you won't know you can do it until you've done it, so just have a go. This is really, really important. Stop comparing yourself to others and get clear about what you want. So when you start to look at yourself as an individual who has skills and experiences to offer, whether you are at uni, whether you're a graduate, whether you're a senior designer, a CEO, focus on what you're good at. So focus on your own path and what you want to learn, what you want to contribute, what your aspiration is, not what an industry set linear path of a career growth is. Comparison is only going to take the wind out of your sails. It's going to make you feel like you're not enough, and that is not true. If you focus on developing your own passion and your own skill, that is what is going to propel you forwards. Focus on your strengths. So I am particularly good at concepts. I can do typography, I can do editorial design, I can do most bits of the job, but my strength is concepts. I am fortunate that I am employed by someone that recognises that, and that's mostly what I'm channeled into. You might not know what your strength is yet, but I can tell you something, I bet Billy will know where you have a strength. You know, you might not know in a personal situation what your strengths are. So get feedback from your colleagues and from your friends, and find a way to collect opinions so that you can learn what your strength is and you can hone in on that. I have built a whole career that has not failed me yet on the ability to come up with creative concepts.
I think just to build on that as well, I think that's the difference in any of you that have done a work placement, gone into a studio, gone into an agency. We're not all ideas people. We need ideas people, but we need people that also can take ideas and craft them beautifully. That might be great at typography, at layout or the detail, or the fine-tuning things, or just have a good eye for something. So there's lots of different skills that you guys will learn, and it's good to have a good base level of all of those things, but you're not going to be experts in all of them. Some of you will be brilliant in some things, not so great at others. So it's just, in that work environment, the dynamic is a team, and I can't express that enough. And I know you probably do group projects or things like that, but university is still about you. But when you come out the other side, it's not about you, it's about the team and about the work and the dynamic of how you use your skills and take the best strengths to work together. And that's really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. A good business will pair your weakness with somebody else's strength.
Well, you've got the pear up there, you've got the orange, you've got the apple, but you've got the pear.
Oh,
just saying.
The third thing about this is about celebrating your wins. So if you don't see the value in what you're bringing, you're probably not celebrating your wins. So celebrating even the smallest win can boost your confidence, and it'll help you see that you're adding value and making a difference, and you're making improvements in yourself, and you're valuable to a workplace or to a university. Keith had a funny story here.
Yes, this is my best non-formal imposter syndrome piece. I was asked by a friend of mine, it was a Christmas party, and she said, "Oh, do you want to come and do a presentation about what you do?" So about the work that you do, the kind of thing you do, about doing creative design, all that sort of stuff. She said, there's quite a few people, but do you want to do it? And I had a few, cheerleaders. And I said, yeah, all right then, I'll do that. And I woke up the next day going, why did I say yes? So that was Christmas time, it was February, so it was February the 14th, it was Valentine's Day. So I put together a presentation, I thought I'll do it all about love. Do it all about, because I love design, I love creativity, I love ideas. I love our industry, I love what we do. So I put this together. I thought, this is going to be all right, but I was absolutely I was more terrified than I was doing that CEO thing I mentioned about the big corporate thing. Now, what I haven't told you is my friend is called Miss Sharples, and she's the teacher of at a primary school, and the audience is a bunch of 6-year-olds. There was 60 6-year-olds, all sat. I should have got you to sit on the rug in front of me, and I'm stood here presenting, right? And I've not felt so much fear and so much kind of, God, they're going to see right through me. They're going to know that I'm just winging this. These 30 odd years of just winging it. And if they're going to ask me questions that I'm not going to be, how can I answer what they're going to ask me stuff I just don't know the answer to. And it was sat there in the end, got 3 questions. First one was, are you married to Miss Sharples? And I went, no. And the second question was, I like your hair, which wasn't really a question, it was more a statement. And the third one said, do you use a screwdriver? And I went, no. But it was just weird, and I still to this day can't understand why I was so fearful. But you wonder whether kids see through that sort of stuff more than maybe adults do. But it taught me loads of stuff, and I'll tell you, afterwards it was brilliant. It was one of the best things I've ever done. And just to try and, again, talk about translating topics and taking information and trying to translate that to something that people can understand. When you've got a completely different audience, you really have to think differently about how you do it. So there's kind of twofold kind of piece there, but that was the most terrifying thing I've ever done. I might do it again, but, you know, not for now.
Not for now. So, the second to last fear, you'll be glad to know, atelophobia.
Fear of telephones?
No, I hadn't thought about it like that actually. No, atelophobia is the fear of making mistakes, the fear of not being perfect. So, well, we're here to tell you that no one is perfect, no one in the industry is perfect, no one in the whole universe is perfect, because everyone makes mistakes, everyone does stupid stuff. But we do have days where what we do doesn't feel like enough, we don't feel good enough, but don't let that fear stop you from trying. We learn through mistakes. Is anyone here frightened of making mistakes? Yeah? So I've got a lovely story to share with you. So when I worked at the Chase, I was very quickly allowed to go and meet clients on my own, which was quite unusual for a junior because you usually go with a senior or a creative director. But Pete was away and he said, oh, you can go and visit Darren. He was a carpet manufacturer. You can go and present that work to him. So I'm so excited. Some of the seniors weren't going out to meet clients and I was going to go. I was pumped. So I was worried. I was excited, but I was worried. What could go wrong? What if I get it wrong? What if I lose the client for the business? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I forget? I'm worried about absolutely everything. Anyway, I went and I did the presentation and it was brilliant. And Darren said, do you want me to walk you to your car? Because it's like a big industrial estate. And I said, yeah, all right then. Walked to my car, went to get my keys out of my bag, pulled my keys out of my bag. Something flew out of my bag, hit Darren in the chest, dropped to the floor. And what was it? A tampon. I'd gone to my first client meeting. Somehow, of all the things that I'd been worried about, this was not on the list. I didn't at any point think I may throw a tampon at the client at the end of the meeting, but I did. So my point in telling you this story is that you can worry about loads of stuff, but the thing that is actually going to happen to you, you never knew was even a possibility. Anyone else? Hands up. Anyone throwing a tampon at anyone? No?
Not yet.
Okay. Let me know if you do in your career, because that would make me feel less alone. What if these people let their failures or mistakes shut them down? Just a couple of them. Walt Disney, fired from his job because he lacked imagination.
There you go.
Steven Spielberg was rejected from film school 3 times. Henry Ford's first 2 automobile companies all failed, and Albert Einstein was labelled mentally slow. What if they had given up? What if they had let fear stand in their way? The world would not be the world we know it today. So the last fear, which is quite well timed, I think. So FOMO, you will know this because I'm pretty sure your generation coined this phrase, but FOMO is the fear of missing out. You're probably all familiar with it in your day-to-day lives, but how does that manifest in your career? Really, really easily. You guys are all now in a similar place in your life. You might be varying in age, but you're all studying at university. But very soon things are going to shift. Thanks to social media, you'll be able to see that shift in finite detail. Some of you will get jobs. Then you will compare jobs. Then you'll compare job titles. You'll compare locations. You'll compare the business. You'll compare how many awards that business has won. Some of you will have families and get married. Some of you will travel, others will graduate and not know what on earth you are actually going to do with your life. And that is okay, but what you will do is look at everybody else that you went to university with and think that everyone else is doing better than you, which is absolutely nonsense. Over the course of your career, you will meet people and you'll compare their journey to yours. LinkedIn will remind you of this. Someone will always have a better job. Someone will always have a better agency. They will always earn more than you, and you just have to get comfortable with that, because what they are doing is actually irrelevant. It's what am I doing, what is good for me, what is the next good step for me. Just as you would do with social media, you just have to learn to recognise that none of this actually matters, and it's all nonsense. So as long as you are happy and you are making progress that is comfortable for you, that is what is important. You have to learn not to compare yourself. There is only you, and your journey is uniquely yours. People compare themselves to others without knowing their skills, knowing their experience, their sacrifice, or the goal of that person. Sacrifice is a huge one here for me. I look at people that graduated at the same time as me. A lot of them have their own businesses, they're creative directors. I'm just a senior. I'm not just a senior. Being a senior is absolutely fantastic, and that is a wonderful achievement, but in comparison to some other people, that might make me feel like I've not done enough, which is nonsense, because I get jealous. Maybe they're looking at me and getting jealous because I think, actually, she's got 4 children. She's managed to have 4 children, which is impressive. Thank you very much. But she's got 4 children and a career. Maybe they have their own business, but they don't even have a family. Maybe they're looking at me thinking, oh, I wish I had that. Whereas I'm looking at them thinking, oh, I wish I had that job title. That's when you need to learn to accept what is good for you. Don't worry about anybody else. Don't rush. You don't need to move fast in your career if you don't want to. Go at your own pace. You don't have to step up and step up and step up. We have people at Forepoint that have got to a position and they are happy. They are happy there. They are comfortable. They are doing good work. They have a lovely work-life balance, and they're really valuable to the business. Don't always have to strive to be at the top. Find where you are comfortable and stay there if you wish. I found a good analogy is, if your child is crap at maths but really good at tennis, don't get a maths tutor, get a tennis instructor, because play to people's strengths. Do what you are good at.
I think there's that phrase that you said that you can't judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because totally agree with what you're saying about what the fear of missing out in comparison. Talk about the social media thing, that's really, really important, not to let that drive your opinions, because most of it's bullshit, just to put on your phrase.
Yeah, absolutely. And just remember, when it feels like everyone around you is making progress, there are millions of people that aren't, or millions of people that aren't publicising it. And there is also millions of people that are looking at you as an aspirational role model as well.
So, well, just, you'll be glad we're finished. And we've actually finished with 3 minutes, well, not quite 3 minutes to spare. So, I think the reason we want to do this is not about our work. We weren't really bothered about sharing our work, more about our experiences. And the fear thing, like I say, came out of a good conversation. And I think the thing to really take away from today is that it's all perfectly normal. All this fear stuff is perfectly normal. If you think about it, you go back to, I don't know, caveman and cavewoman days, we have fear because if we're not kind of on our toes, we're going to get eaten by something or stabbed by something. So our natural disposition is to be fearful of things. So, like I said before, the key thing is to embrace that, to not think that you're the only one that's worried about things. But, you know, we as creative folk, again, as I mentioned before, we're hardwired to doubt ourselves. And again, use that as your superpower. And that's really important because, you know, that's what will improve you. Those little bits of self-doubt, that little bit of fear, that bit of being out your comfort zone is what this is all about. Whether it's standing up here doing what we're doing, whether it's having a conversation, whether it's coming up with an idea, that little bit of fear is a good thing, and it's a great thing to sort of push you forwards. Like I say, we're a slightly kind of strange, weird, crazy bunch because all of those fears, you know, play into our part. I don't think that's unique to us, but I think it seems to kind of congregate. Those fears congregate more in the kind of creative industry than they do perhaps in other industries. But I think one of the most important things I said before, and I think one of the things I will never get tired of, you know, in spite of all the fears, is that high, that little bit when the stars aligned, as I mentioned before, and you come up with an idea that just connects something together. And we had a reaction, it was in November, and we were doing a presentation to some client work, they were overseas in New York, and we did a presentation to really seasoned kind of marketing folks, quite high level, and they went, at the end of it, we finished the presentation, they went, that is the best thing we've ever seen. And we just went, like that.
Because you're on a Teams
just-
call and you went to look really professional, like, oh yeah. Like,
Yeah, well, yeah.
When we got off, we'll be like, ah!
Exactly. Whoa! Because you can't replace that. So going back to the highs and lows, that bit of our job is the best bit ever. It's not going to happen every day. It's not going to happen all the time. But it makes those fears worthwhile. So I think all I would say is that you have to embrace the fears. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, but you've got to learn to enjoy the ride. That is it.
Thank you very much. I must just say, you have the most beautiful campus I've ever seen. You are so lucky. Like, this is absolutely gorgeous. I would love to come back and do my degree again, because this is an incredible setup you've got here.
Thank you, Abi. Thank you, Keith.
You're welcome.
Abi and Keith will be around for a short while, I think.
Yeah, stay for a little bit, yeah.
So
Yeah, because we didn't get any pizza, so
Yeah, no,
I ain't going
Just
for-
remind me to take this mic off, because I need to tell you a story as well. We did some filming once, and we were on site somewhere, and we had people mic'd up to do some shoots. So we had a camera guy, we had a sound guy, and we mic'd up this guy, and we were ready to shoot, and he went, where's he gone? Where's he gone? And I could see the sound man going, and he'd gone to the toilet, but he hadn't turned his mic off. So it was just, and the guy came back in the room, and we were like, thankfully it could have been a lot worse, let me just put it that way. So remember to take my mic off because I needed to be.
Yeah.
And on that bombshell.
Yeah, press